Welcome back. So far with Ludory, he has went over his presentation about his new group, Unaltered, in part one, and in part two, I questioned him on the presentation and a little bit about who he is. This part, we continue with questions of Unaltered, general tactivism, and much more.
Okay. So I know you like data. I like data
Yeah,
too. But in your estimate of how long you been an activist for?
that's an interesting question because since I was very young, I opposed circumcision, but I didn't actually come across the term intactivist until a couple of months ago. I'm not sure why. Maybe Google is just biased. I don't really see that term outside of intactivism.
Interesting. So I think that just speaks that we're like it's a failing movement if if you oppose circumcision and intactivism doesn't come up, that's a failure on our part. But anyways, in your couple months of being in the intactivist community, what number of people do you think runs off of emotions versus data?
Oh wow. So I would only be able to give like my intuition, my subjective estimate, because obviously I haven't surveyed people and measured how many rely on emotions. But my subjective guess would be roughly anywhere from 60% to 90%.
Okay, that's how many
Um,
people run off of emotions versus data, correct?
yeah, I would say my conservative estimate is 60%. And my not so optimistic estimate is 90%.
Okay. So when you're doing unaltered, are you hoping to draw in new intactivists that care about data versus those who are being emotional? Because I agree. I think there's a lot of emotional intactivists, and I think they are the majority. I think 85% of intactivists are emotional, very emotional. Like they run off emotions. Like they like the videos that are like screaming baby, bad. Oh gosh, like, share everywhere. They probably aren't even gonna like this. They're like, what is this? No screaming baby, no circumcision bad. Like, you know, um, so are you hoping to draw in more intactivists that are going to go help? Because you did say you have other groups that are not intactivists, but related to intactivism. How's that all gonna work?
So, with any social movement, you want to get as many people on board as possible. So, for example, abortion, right? Not everyone is affected by that, but you can still get people who can't have abortions to be on board with you. So on the same vein, and I'm not trying to make a political statement on whether I support that or not. That's just a example topic. So please don't hold me to that. But for intactivism, it's important to leverage that and have people outside of the movement jump on board with you.
Okay, so are you going to be targeting intactivists or are you going to be targeting outside intactivism? Like, what is the main focus in Unaltered?
There's currently not a main focus on that. My main focus is just getting this campaign off the ground and then seeing the data and then publishing it. And then after that, we can worry about public communication efforts and which strategy works the best.
Okay, where are you going to publish this at?
Our Discord server, as well as the website that's already up for the campaign.
Okay, I will have that in the description so people don't forget. All right, so it seems like Unaltered has a lot of things going for it. You have the leaflet campaign that you're going to start doing data-driven intactivism, and you're going to go ahead and also analyze other intactivist groups. How many ideas do you have currently for Unaltered? And what is it like managing an interactivist group for those who don't know?
To clarify, analyzing other interactivist groups is not set in stone. That's just one of many ideas. As far as how many ideas, I have a spreadsheet. I believe last I checked was in the 200s. So just a lot of different ideas of what could be tested. Obviously, I'm going to prioritize the ones that are low hanging fruit first. As far as like running an organization, I will say that I severely underestimated how much time it takes to do all of the work. There's a lot of things that jump at you that you don't expect that eat up your time.
Okay. So what are like the biggest things that you didn't expect that happened?
So that's an interesting question. Um, it definitely surprised me the level of drama and conflict within an activist community. So a lot of my time was wasted on reaching out to and identifying which groups were effective. Some groups were not so effective. Some groups were a lot more emotional, and you know, full respect to that. But it wasn't what I was looking for. So a lot of my time was wasted on basically outreach to other activists.
Wow. I
Um,
almost feel like if you watched Potts's live video, it would have showed you all the people we reached out to. And yeah, this is why Potts is a thing, guys. So you don't end up like Ludory being like, oh, wow, people are emotional and don't want to talk to you. And oh gosh, crazy. Like, yes. Um, no, I'm kidding. Sometimes we got to learn the hard way. So the biggest obstacle for you was the lack of teamwork and the drama, right?
yeah, I would say that's the biggest obstacle.
Okay. So how did you remedy this obstacle? How did you get over it? Like what groups did you find that were like, yes, this is it?
So yeah, um, not to put you on the spotlight, but I found pause. I found like alliance, and I joined the alliance. So like you all seem to be pretty reasonable people who are passionate about making a change. I ran into random intactivists along the way. I mentioned Izuko using his 3D CAD skills to uh, a project that he's passionate about, and I support that 100%.
So are you taking on projects that anyone can do? Like if someone was like, oh, hey, I want to go ahead and do a flyer campaign. Can I join Unaltered? Would you be like, okay.
Yes and no. So I would have to discuss with them how we would go about designing, how to measure the efficacy of that. And I would also have to discuss with them how practical it is to do a pilot test. So for the leaflet campaign, the reason why it was so appealing, besides the research supporting it, is that it doesn't cost that much to put up a website and upload some PDF files, right? And it doesn't cost that much to pay some random users online to look at an argument and tell me like how they feel about circumcision after the fact. So if for example the project was let's publish a book, a pilot test of publishing a book seems very costly. Maybe like a booklet, I'm not sure. So it really depends on the project and how practical it is to run a pilot test of it and how practical it is to measure the results of it.
Okay, so how does Unaltered work? Like, who makes this decision? Is it like a group of people? Because Pots, we have a group of people. I know there's board members with other groups, and they have to kind of filter it a little bit before they get back to you. Or is this kind of like a dictatorship?
It's more decentralized. So
You
if I
broke up.
were
Man, you
it's
broke up. Wow.
it's decentral
Mm-mm. Somebody needs to get Verizon or
Verizon,
Xfinity. What?
Xfinity.
What
Okay.
did you? What did you? What do you have? Are you at Starbucks?
Starbucks,
Bro, you're out here using McDonald's Wi-Fi
McDonald's, Wi-Fi,
on a
Burger
freaking
King. Have it your
hot.
way.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, so it's decentralized, and that's on purpose. So if for some reason I personally get burnout and I say deuces, other people are still working on their own things.
How did your breaking point become, I don't have one. I don't care. I'm gonna keep going. I'm stubborn to, oh, if I get burnout, it's decentralized because I'm probably gonna get burnout.
The keyword is if.
If, okay.
So I don't expect that to happen because I've been told I'm very stubborn and I believe it.
Who told you this? I'm curious.
Who told me? No, just throughout my life, when I set my eyes on something, I am very passionate about achieving it. And I persevere through multiple obstacles.
Oh, fantastic. I can't wait. Give me your story.
give, give you my story. Oh my
Give me an
gosh.
example. Give me an example
An
when,
example.
yes.
So there was a point in my life where I actually became homeless and I was surprised at the lack of services available for homeless people. It was very difficult to climb out of that because of poverty traps, lack of resources. It's I found out very quickly it's very difficult to get a job while homeless. It's very difficult to even just save money to get out of that situation. There was a point where I actually considered giving up. And I actually considered giving up because I looked at the data on homeless people and I saw that it's very unlikely for a decent portion of homeless people to actually get out of their situation because of how different social systems are set up. But in this case, I did not go with the data and I said, screw it. I gotta keep going. I gotta keep pressing forward. It took 9 years, which is a lot longer than I would like it to be. But given the major disadvantages I was at, I was surprised I got out of it at all. Yeah, it was
And now you own a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom house.
now I live with my girlfriend. So um and
Okay, nice.
yeah, so I
Well, I'm
share.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you came through homelessness, and I'm glad that you persevered and you found a girlfriend to live with.
No, that's way after the fact. Like currently I live with my girlfriend, but I got a homelessness well before that. So
Okay, well, I hopefully you use your knowledge from being homeless to the success you are now to intactivism, and you could take intactivism out of the homeless state that it's in. I mean, how do you feel intactivism is? Do you feel like it's homeless that needs help?
so there's definitely a lot of bias in favor of circumcision and bias against intactivists. And it's very difficult to undo prejudice because they're habits. And as we all know, it's very difficult to break a bad habit.
Okay.
I don't know if intactivism is necessarily like quote unquote homeless. I will say the work is definitely cut out for us, but it's also a thing where once we get past a breaking point or critical point, it'll get much easier.
Okay. So How do you see circumcision ending?
How do I see it ending? I mean, way in the future, I imagine the last thing that will be done is to like the thing that seals it shut is just banning it by law. But obviously, there has to be a lot of steps and milestones to get to that point. Um,
Okay.
so part of what I've learned from studying different social sciences is that everything's connected and it makes it really complex. So you can't just look at the government in isolation because companies pay money to lobby the government. And you can't look at the market in isolation because government policies affected by policy. So you also have aspects like culture, how culture affects policy and how culture affects the markets. So all these combined makes a very, very complicated spaghetti that just needs to be unraveled.
Okay. So, Ladori, we have all the fan questions.
Oh boy.
Are you ready for this? Okay.
I don't know if I'm
So,
ever ready.
first fan question. What's their story? How'd they become aware of the depths of the male circumcision issue, and what compelled them to want to do something about it? Very gender neutral when they said that, but okay.
It's fair. So as I mentioned earlier, my interest is in mathematics and social science. So I very much care about solving complex social issues. As far as like a personal level goes, I care very much about addressing sexual violence. And at the current scale, it's 1.4 million babies are having their genitals mutilated per year. That is a very large number. Um, and the extent of the harm is also very, very permanent. I know there's an organization that's working on hopefully restoring that, but even then, how much would it cost? So clearly, there's devastating effects at a very large scale. And it would surprise me if intactivists didn't think that other people would look at that and say, wow, this is really terrible. We should do something about it.
Well, how did you become aware
How to become
of
aware?
circumcision? Yeah, how did you become aware of it? Like, what was like, oh, this is bad? Or did you just know it was bad? Or you just like, oh, this is bad? Like, how dare you, like, circumcise people?
I don't know, like the very first instance I became aware, but it wasn't like people weren't talking about it. I found out at a very young age that some people were circumcised and some were not circumcised. And that's talked about in media, that's talked about with the age of the internet, it's very easy to be exposed to different topics. And as I researched more into it, I was very curious, like why things are the way they are. As a little kid, I was very, very curious about things in general. So I was like, okay, so why? But why? And the more I looked into it, I was like, oh, this is not great.
Okay. So you were like a teenager when you found out?
I would say maybe even in middle school, but like I do remember circumcision being a topic in one of my English classes in high school. So that I guess that's like the first like formal exposure to it, but it's not really a secret that um that circumcision is a thing. It would surprise me if a parent gave birth and then was like, oh, like what's circumcision? You're telling
Yeah,
me I need to do
so
this thing?
yeah, so but whenever in English class, were you opposed to it or were you like okay with it or were you like against it
Well, of
immediately?
course I was opposed to it. Why? Of course I was opposed to it. Um, and
Did
it's
you
played.
protest in English class? Were you like, this is horrible. This is teacher, why are you telling people this is okay? This is bad. Why even in English class? Like what were they teaching you? Like the like verbs and adjectives, like you have circumcision, circumcise, and circumcising is the verb. The like why in English class? That's such a weird time.
So, well, I mean, it's not uncommon for English classes to cover debate on various controversial topics. So that just happened to be one of the different topics that was covered. And it was covered within the context of comparing it to like mutilating clitorises, which I can understand where they're coming from that perspective. However, it's not a measuring contest, right? We need to evaluate the suffering caused to the individual, not how we feel about its relative suffering to other individuals.
Wow, okay, interesting. So, since you're a data person and since you already know about the group Forgin, have you looked into Forgin a lot?
I did look into it a lot, but insofar as measuring the severity of circumcision, because one way you can measure like the level of harm of something is to measure how much it costs to rectify that harm. And currently it's infinity, right? Because there's nothing that exists today that can, even if you had all the money in the world. But in the future, hopefully, you know, there will be ways to restore it. And the cost of that, from my understanding, is in the realm of thousands of dollars, which if you take that and multiply it at the 1.4 million babies per year scale, that's a lot of suffering.
Wow, good
Um,
quick math there. Okay. Um,
quick math. I don't want to make it all mathematical. I
uh,
don't, a lot of people don't like numbers. A lot of people don't like math.
okay, so
So
what are the odds you get Forgin of working?
origin of working. That's a really interesting question. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows the inner workings of like how their experiments are going. So it's difficult to evaluate how
Don't they
likely.
show you?
Yes and no. Like they publish the data, but do we currently know like live testing now what's happening with the sheep? Like now today. Like we know some things, but do we know currently what the status is on how effective that restoration uh is?
Okay.
So
So are you pro Forgin or pro foreskin restoration? Which is stretching. Like which one are you more of, I guess?
Hmm. I definitely am supportive of restoration more than any individual group. I care more about the causes. I care about causes, not necessarily like the individuals who like are going towards that cause, right?
Okay, so you care more about the ideology versus the people in the ideology.
Insofar as like what motivates me to pursue intactivism, it's a level of harm that is very graphic and takes away a fundamental part of someone's body, and it has cascading effects on their life. So that motivates me a lot. As far as like how I feel about individuals or specific groups, that's not as relevant to me within the grand scheme of like what motivates me to pursue intactivism.
Okay, but you're not like looking into Forgin or anything like too closely. Like you don't really care about
that or like restoration, you just care about prevention versus cure type thing?
For now, just because the current options available for restoration in the true sense of it is zero, and in the near future, maybe one. Whereas the tools available to us to prevent circumcisions is like in the hundreds, and I have a spreadsheet full of that.
All
Um,
right. Where can people get the spreadsheet if they want to see it?
if they want to see it, it's just a bunch of ideas I have on my Google Drive, but they're
Can you
all
show us?
um
The audience wants to see.
the audience wants to see.
Yep, they want to see.
uh I mean, the thing is that it's just a bunch of random ideas. So it's not necessarily like ideas that I'm going to pursue. It's just good to have a repository of ideas so that you can evaluate which different strategies so that you can prioritize which ones to do a pilot test of next.
Okay.
But no, I mean it's nothing that you wouldn't like see from like someone just brainstorming a bunch of different ideas for how to prevent circumcision. Because that's the first step is just to just do a brain dump and just list everything you can think of.
So we're on the brain dumping stage slash leaflet phase slash stay tuned for what else is gonna come of Unaltered.
Yeah,
Sounds, yeah,
I mean
okay.
like so if people want to know some things that I'm unaltered is more likely than not to pursue in the near future after this leaflet campaign, there's a website called effectiveactivist.com that literally covers the political science research on what works and doesn't work in activism. They have a political bias, but the research is transferable to all ideologies.
Okay. Well, Ludory, it's been lovely having you on. So if my audience had to go take one thing from this entire conversation, what
Oh
would it be?
gosh. One thing for this entire conversation. Um, geez. Join the unaltered Discord server and uh, help us fight the good fight.
All right, awesome. And I will leave the links down below. And oh, how do you feel about the Potts channel? I always ask this now.
Oh,
What can Potts do better? How do you feel about Potts channel? What's up?
how do I feel about your channel? What can you do better? I mean, communicators can influence a lot of people to do a lot of impact, right? So I definitely feel like there's a lot of potential there. Whether that potential is being actualized seems to be dependent on the intactivist community itself. So I'm not really sure what you can do because your news is catered to intactivists. The only thing I could think of is to direct intactivists who care about making a change to volunteer opportunities, donation opportunities within the intactivist community.
Don't I do that every time I do interactivism fundraising?
Yeah, that's why that's why it's difficult to give advice because that's pretty much from what I understand like all you can do until intactivism as a movement scales to be larger.
So Potts is perfect? Is that what you're trying to say? Potts is
Pulse is perfect.
perfect. Wow, okay,
I
okay.
don't know. I don't know if it's perfect. It's just difficult to think of ways to improve it. So,
Okay. Uh, quick question. So, Ladori, are you ever going to appeal to emotions when you go and ask for donations or help at all?
not in a manipulative way. When people face injustice, they're very angry, and it's valid to be angry. So, telling people about the level of harm that circumcision causes obviously induces anger. But I don't think that's manipulative at all because people get angry because they see an injustice, because they want to do something about it. And but like things like, you you see those ads all the time that show like a picture of like an animal or some person and like sad music and all that jazz. I mean, no, I don't see that being effective because it would contradict transparency because it feels like we're just manipulating people, and I don't want to fall to that level.
Interesting. Okay. So you're holding yourself to a higher standard than other groups would.
I don't know what standards other groups hold themselves to, so I'm not sure. So
Okay, so it's okay. So interesting. But those are like your morals and your ethics, is that you're not going to manipulate donors by appealing to emotion.
it's also strategy because manipulative strategies do work. Like the research does show it works, but it works for getting money. It doesn't work for actually solving the issue. So,
Wow. Wow,
uh,
that's crazy. Wow, that's a whole lot of groups just that's
so
dropping bombs on a lot of them.
no, no, don't. I'm not trying to like.
Yeah, no,
But
don't
if
make people angry. We're not trying to
if
manipulate anybody and getting angry at what they're doing or,
if
you know.
if the shoe fits, I would encourage people to evaluate trying new shoes. But as far as like the appeal to emotion, it's very, very good at generating revenue. It's not so good at solving the issue. So, from a strategy standpoint, it doesn't make sense to do that, especially since a lot of people are going to like a lot of people who do make a change care about what actually works. And if they see me doing manipulative strategies, they're going to be less likely to actually help Unaltered make a change. Because there's a difference between people who feel strongly about a cause and people who actually go out there and make an impact that they can show for. They have evidence to show for. So
All right.
yeah.
Okay, guys, that was Ludory, the owner of the brand new Intactivist group Unaltered. Let me know what you think of it and him by commenting down below. I will have his links down in the description so you can follow him and maybe even donate if you want. I don't get commissions or anything off of his links. Please give this a like and a subscribe so you don't miss our other interviews. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and Ludory. It was a fantastic time. Bye!